Very good. What does it mean? Right. What does it mean though? What is
I will be receiving. I will be getting
reward?
zakah.
Very good. So very good. So the question is, what size kippah do you have to wear? And sort of Yeshua, Rav Huna, the son of Yeshua, says, Titili, I should be rewarded. It should be coming to me, sechar. Shelo halachti arba amot b'gilui hadosh, because I never walked 4 amot without wearing a kippah. So first thing Hakam Avadia is doing here, he's establishing the wearing a kippah. Is it an obligation or is it midat hasidut? That's the first thing he wants to attack. And so, Rav Huna, the son of Rabbi Yeshua, he says he never walked 4 amot without wearing a kippah. In Masechet Shabbat, it says, Imo shel Rav Rahman bar Yitzhak, the mother of Rav Rahman bar Yitzhak, Hayitam mazhira oto tamid, she always told her son, L'chasot rosho, to always cover his head, V'lo yelech b'gilui harosh, and not to go barren on his head with nothing on top of his head. Why? Kedeh sheyeh alav moreh shamayim, so you can fear Hashem. Morah shamayim, sorry. So you can fear God, and always remember to have morah shamayim. In the Zohar HaKadosh, Parashat Balak, it says, Lo yelich arba amot b'gilui harosh. You should not go 4 amot without wearing a covering. Why? Mishum she'or hashechina, because the light of the Shekhinah, lema'ala milosho, is on top of your head. Umamshich lo hayim, and this is what gives you life. The light of Hashem's presence is on top of your head. It gives you life. The Hasidim, the Baal Tanya always uses the term of a candle when he talks about us, like we're a shemen, we're a candle, and then on top of us is like a wick filled with oil, and Hashem we light the oil. A little bit similar. Oh wow, look at this. And this is what it means. The oil on your head, it should never go away. This is what it jives with the Zohar. And the Zohar says in Parashat Pinechas, Asur letalmid hacham lalechet arba amot b'gilui harosh. Thank you. God bless. A talmid hacham is not allowed to go arba amot without a kippah. Says the Zohar.
Talmid Chacham is really referring to Talmid Chacham as Talmidim that Lomdim Bet Midrash, or is referring to Yerei Shamayim?
No, Yerei Shamayim. Yerei Shamayim. Yariv, where's Yariv? Moshe, is there an extra table anywhere? Yeah. And so from the Gemara, it would seem it's not a real obligation to wear a kippah. From the Zohar, it seems it's very, very serious. It's very hot. The Gemara says, the words of the Gemara is that Rabbi Yehuna, the son of Rabbi Yeshua, never walked 4 amot without a kippah, because he always wants to think of Hashem that's on top of his head. That's why the kippah is there. The Gemara says this. And then on the second Gemara, the same rabbi, Rabbi Huna, the son of Yeshua, says, Titili, I should be rewarded. Titili in Aramaic means yavoli. It should come to me reward. Why? Because I never walked without a kippah, which means it should be rewarded for it. If it's a right. Exactly. If it's just something you have to do, what are you boasting about? No one who would walk around saying, I should be rewarded. I never ate ham sandwich. I mean, if you have to do it, you have to do it. So that's why the Gemara seems it's a midat hasidut. And the Zohar gets a little deeper, and the Zohar says, no, on top of you is the Shekhinah, and that's what gives you Hayim. And therefore, called Hamid Hacham, says the Zohar. A Talmid Hacham should never go without a kippah. That's what the Zohar says. Yeah, those are the words of the Zohar. And Mikol Sheken, for sure, She'asud, Lebarech, Ulaskir Hashem, Biguloi Arosh. For sure, says the Zohar, you cannot say Hashem's name or make a blessing, and that may be why a Talmid Hacham always has to wear, because he's always assumed to be doing these things. Rambam writes the same thing in the Guide to the Perplexed. Gedolei Hachamenu, these words of the Rambam. Gedolei Hachamenu, our great rabbis, the great rabbis always had a kippah because the Shekhinah is on top of their heads, and they wanted to respect this. So from the Rambam, he uses there's a whole question, by the way, if the Rambam ever studied the Zohar, like a massive philosophical dispute, because a lot of people say he never even saw the Zohar, but a lot of the stuff he says, it looks like it comes straight out of the Zohar. So it's a whole, it's an interesting discussion. He doesn't quote the Zohar, but There's a couple of, like, the Lubavitch Rebbe has a whole thing about this. There's a couple of lines. It came to life, but maybe it was around before. There's a couple of things he says that, like, it's only written in the Zohar. Like, how would he know it? That's what the pro Zohar people say. All right. והנה, מבואר בספר אורחות חיים. It says in the Sefer Orchot Haim, and also in the Sefer Kobo, in the name of the Maharam Merutenberg, she'en isud min hadin lalechet begilui harosh. It's not forbidden to walk around with no kippah. And this that we said in the Masechet Shabbat, titi li, I should be rewarded. Shelo halachti begilui harosh. Zem midat hasidut. That's why he's saying I should be rewarded for it, because he's doing something extra and pious. And so writes the Tashbats as well. Shelashon titili, the fact that he's saying I should be rewarded, is muchach dehaveh midat hasidut. Obviously, it's doing something extra special and not something obligatory. Agreeing with this is the Ritva.
The language does not necessarily cover the subject of shiur, because he's mentioning specific distance. Maybe he's saying the Hasidut is that you could say that, for instance, you could not walk 20 amah, but he was Hasid, you didn't even walk 2.
Yeah, but Maran Shulchan takes the 4 amot thing for everybody, which we'll talk about in 1 second. So the 4 amot is called, your 4 amot is your area. If you walk less than 4 amot, there's not even midat hasidut. You don't have to, you don't have to wear kippah in the shower. Your 4 amot is once you go 4 amot, it's like you left your little zone. So I don't know if I would agree with you on that. And Maran Shulchan uses the word. For some people, for us, not really. Like the Ben Ish Hai goes by the Zohar all the time. Chacham Ovadia, Maran Shulchan Aruch is really the way to go. So we have to see what Maran's words are, which we'll see in 1 second. And okay, fine. Maran Habet Yosef, he writes, he brings this for halacha that it's not really a obligation, it's more midat hasidut. Omram. However, in the Bet Yosef, he writes, he says, why do we say every morning the berachav or ter Yisrael b'tefara? Oter is he wraps, like crowns us in glory, I would say. And he says in Bet Yosef, asur lalechet arba amot begilui harosh, says the Bet Yosef, because it's forbidden to walk 4 amot with no kippah, and therefore we make a beracha on Hashem. So which one is it? Is it asur or is it hasidut? It's worth noting. This is the Bet Yosef, not Maran Shulchan, not Shulchan Aruch. So it's not the final version of his work. And אפילו דברי המפרש שאינו אסור ללכת בגלל הראש, מכל מקום מודה שמידת חסידות היא שלא ללכת בגלל הראש. And everyone makes the beracha or ter Yisrael b'tefara. And so it would seem that Maran Bet Yosef holds we're all like Talmidei Chachamim these days. Maybe we all have this classification that we, for blessing on it. I always learned that it was the kippah. Yeah, I always learned that. I could be wrong though. Look it up. Yeah. It's a crown. It's a crown. I mean, because when you go, yeah, but also they used to do the Bechot HaShahad while they were getting dressed. We don't really do that anymore these days. So it used to be when you put your thing on your head. Yeah, it probably means both, but yeah, it means both. But also, like they used to get dressed and do it. They put their belt on. Okay, so. Yeah, it definitely doesn't only mean a kippah. You're right. It doesn't only mean a kippah, that's for sure. But the pshat meaning is the kippah. Okay. Okay, let's go forward. וכן אמרנו בזוהר הקדוש פרשת נשוא, וכפי שישראל הם המצווים בכך, כדי שיהיה מוראה שמיים מעליהם, since we have to fear of heaven. לכן אנו מברכים עוטה זה בתפארה. That's what it says in the Zohar. That's why we make this beracha, because we have to cover our heads to fear God. That's what the Zohar says. Umashma, it seems shedato noter that the Bet Yosef's opinion leans yoter she'asur lalechet begilui harosh. Based on this Bet Yosef, you might say it's forbidden to walk without a kippah. V'chein mashma yoter Bet Yosef mikom makom halacha k'mishnah harona. However, the halacha will follow the later halacha, which is Shulchan Aruch Siman Sadi I Aleph. Don't go too far. It's Orach Hayim 91. You can find it there and read it for us. And Moshe will read this in a second. That's mashma that it's not an obligation, it's only midat hasidut. Siman 91. You probably went much further than that, no? Moshe?
90. Sadi Al.
You're in Or Haim still, yeah? Okay. Sadi Aleph? What do you got? Yeah, go for it. Read it. I think it's Dalid. I think it's Dalid. I think it's Sadi Aleph. Gimel or Dalid, I think it is. V'chen muchach. Well, I got another Shulchan Aruch. Here, go to a different one. Ready? Hold that page. Go to the beginning, the first page of the book. Siman Bet. This is a classic Shulchan Aruch. Just don't lose that spot. Go to the Siman Bet. Siv Vav. It probably should be the second page or the first page. So right in the beginning of Shulchan Aruch. He says, Lo yelech b'koma zekufa. Got it? It's right in the beginning. 6, 2-6. Yeah. Asur lelech bekoma zekufa, it says. You cannot walk around arrogantly. Velo yelech Yossi, this is the Man Shulchan words. Velo yelech adba'am, again. Start again. Asur lelech bekoma zekufa. It's forbidden to walk around arrogantly. Velo yelech arba amot begiloy arosh. And you shouldn't walk 4 feet, 4 amot, without a kippah. No, well, the question is that word asur is going in the first part. So I'm not sure how come. Yeah. So Chamadah says, he starts with the word forbidden to walk around arrogantly. But he didn't continue this word of isud. If he held it was forbidden, he would have said the same thing. You can't walk around. It's forbidden to walk around arrogantly. And so, or vegam asud, to walk without a kippah. But he doesn't say that. He says, Velo yelech arba amot. You don't find the Moshe. And you shouldn't walk 4 amot without a kippah. So it seems that he holds like the Gemara, that's midat hasidut. V'chen hu chach HaMaharshal. The Maharshal proves from this, mimashmut Gemara, just from the words of the Gemara, she'en ze ela midat hasidut, that it's not an obligation to wear a kippah. He's writing this, but it's only. There we go. V'lo yelech. Right. So he starts with the word isud, but then he switches it to v'lo yelech. So the Maharshal says from here that it's not an obligation. And he adds, and he says the following. There's a midrash. The midrash says as follows. Ready for this midrash? Amani biberachia melech basar vadam meshaged parot kema lemedina. A king of flesh and bones will send an important document, letter, decree to his people. Ma'osim kol bnei medina. When they see it hanging up in the town square, how does everybody read the king's document? Omdim al raglehem uforeim et rosham. They stand up and they take their hats off and they read the letter. And they read it with trembling and in fear of the king. That's how you read a letter from the king. But Hashem says to the Jewish people, Banai, my children, I want you to read Shema. But I'm not making you stand up and I'm not making you take off your hats to read Kiryat Shema. This is what the Midrash says. Mashma, we learn from here. If he wanted to, he could make us take our hats off. But how could you say Shema without a hat on? The very fact of this midrash would prove to you that you can read Shema without a hat, without a covering on your head. What he meant to say in the midrash is, I'm not making you, but if I wanted to, I could make you pray with no covering. It's the opposite of what you would think is respect. Mashma, it seems from here that it's not that. This is what the Maharshal writes. Maharshal writes this. Even though he has a lot to rely upon, it kind of makes sense what he's saying, says Chacham Ovadia. It's not enough to prove this point. And I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of this midrash. But basically, it's not enough to say that you can pray without a kippah. That's going way too far. The Hida writes Milashon Maran Shulchan Aruch, she'en ze ela midat hasidut. The Hida says, look at the words of Shulchan Aruch. He says, velo yelech. He doesn't say asur lelech. And so we see that it's not an obligation, says the Hida, to wear a kippah. Okay. Apapi, says the Chamadia. I know, but it doesn't say the word asur in the Torah. Asur, once we're in the Baal Tuash Baal Peh, we use the word. I know, but we're talking now in our days, we use the word asur. It doesn't say the word asur. Asur is the Aramaic word, really. Asur, it means tied down. Melech asur barehatim. The Torah doesn't use the word asur. But now in Shulchan Aruch and all the our things, we use the word asur. So why don't you use it? You understand? You don't find the word asur. It could work either way. Yeah. And so the Rav Shalom Asas, who was a contemporary of the Chacham, he was alive. Is he still alive? Rav Shalom Asas? I don't know. Rav Shalom Asas, he was more strict, and he says, no, you're reading in Shulchan Aruch wrong, and he holds that it's forbidden to walk out with the kippah. And says the Chacham, "Ha'emet Torah darcha she'ikar kemo shekadav Maran Hida." I'm sorry, says the Chacham, I don't agree with you. Really, the Maran Shulchan Aruch was not saying you must wear a kippah. And we now established, so the first paragraph of this halacha is, at least when this halacha was originated, to wear kippah, it wasn't an obligation when it started. We're talking about these days. It wasn't an obligation. It's minhag hasidut, and that's why the rabbi says, titili, I should be rewarded. 91.
says, יש אומרים שאסור להוציא אזכרה מפיו בראש מגולה.
Yeah.
ויש אומרים שיש למחות להיכנס בבית הכנסת בגילוי הראש.
Yeah. יש אומרים ויש אומרים. And he's not talking about walking around there. He's talking about praying. In praying, he's talking about yesh omrim she'asur. He doesn't even talk about walking around. So now, there's a couple more opinions. I'm not going to read every word now because I want to skip to the end. The Turei Zahav, the Taz, as he's known, has a different opinion. He writes, Nir'eli, it seems to me, sheyesh isud gamur bazeh mita'am acher, that it's absolutely forbidden to walk around with no kippah, says the Taz, from another reason. Shemichivan she'achshav hoku etzel ha'akum. Now it is a law from the goyim. It is a custom from the goyim. Shetekach umiyad kishiyoshevim masirim ma'alehem hakova she'al rosham. As soon as they sit down for any formal gathering, they take off their hats that are on their heads. Imken, says the Taz, you're copying the goyim. That's what the Taz wants to say.
Really, because they're wearing the hat and they take it.
You're just not wearing them.
It's not like they go
We were all wearing hats, though. Everyone used to wear hats in this year. Yeah. These days, yeah, so this is the hukot of those. He's saying in his days, the Taz said those days. Ulam says, yeah, even if you're correct, we had a Gemara class about this, I don't know, 5-6 months ago. I don't know if you remember. Yossi, you were there for sure, I know. We had a Gemara class defining what is called and we said anything that makes sense is not called copying the goyim. I'm wearing pants because it makes sense to wear pants. Copying the goyim is something that makes no sense at all. So Chamadia says, it's hot outside, it's sweaty. The guy doesn't want to wear a hat. You're not taking it off because you're copying the goyim. You're taking it off because you're hot.
The guideline is that it doesn't make sense.
There's two guidelines. If it doesn't make sense,
I think the other guideline, the main guideline is that what did they make in order to distinguish themselves as such.
That's not what they use. The Thanksgiving class, the turkey class is where we talked about this. The turkey class. Can you eat turkey? So were you here for the Thanksgiving class? The thing we talked all about this. Can you eat turkey on Thanksgiving?
But anyway, that one is not a religious thing.
It's nothing to do with religion. Nothing to do with religion, though. If you're copying the goyim, unless it makes sense.
But the question if it was goyim, the question if there was, let's say, when the pioneers came, there were music.
No, come on. Anyway, let's move forward. Says the Chamadia, it's not a problem. It's no one's taking it off to be like the goyim. It makes total sense if you want to take your hat off because you're hot and sweaty. Whatever, leave it alone. Next one, he says, and we'll skip to the next one. Mikom Makom, says the Chamadia, it seems to me שבכיסוי הראש בזמננו, if you fast forward to our days, says Chacham Ovadia, יש טעם יותר ממידת חסידות. I have a reason to say it's even more than just being pious. כי ידוע, because it's known, שזה דרכם של החופשים פורקי עול תורה ומצוות ללכת בגילוי הראש. Everyone knows, says Chacham Ovadia, the people who are not religious, they walk around with nothing on their head. ויש היכר מיוחד להכיר בין עובד אלוהים לאשר לא עובדו. There is a very easy way to tell if someone's religious, usually, or not religious. It's a very easy signal. If someone wears a kippah, you know he's probably religious, not always. And if he doesn't, probably not religious, also not always. Because the religious people always wear kippahs. V'hafcha hakippah, here's a play on words. Hafcha hakippah, the kippah has now flipped she'ad rosham l'samil. Samil, a signal. Le'adam dati, it's a symbol of a religious person, shemuneh shamayim alav, that you fear heaven. V'im ken, mi she'olech b'giloi rosh, someone who walks around with no kippah, yesh lahush bo mishum manita ayin. It's manita ayin. You're going to cause people, shi'achsheduhu leforek ol malchut shamayim alav. They're going to suspect you of not being a religious Jew, even if you are a religious Jew. Even though there are some Americans, let's say, who came to Israel, and they do the same thing they do in America, they walk around with no kippah. So in Israel, at least in Israel, he's saying, these guys are the minimum of the minimum. The guys the Syrians for 100, as long as I can remember, they have a big kippah box in the beginning of the shul. You go to the Syrian shul, big box full of kippahs. They put it on, they take it, and these guys go to shul every day, more than the people in the shul. Every day, kippah off, right in the box on the way out. That's what they used to do. That's what they used to do. And so when these guys moved to Israel, Khamilah says, not in Israel. Israel is ours. Israel, we wear kippahs. You can suspect, al kol panim, mishum marit ayin. Maybe it's marit ayin. People are going to judge you wrong. And there's a pasuk, V'yitem nikiyim Hashem b'Yisrael. You have to have a good reputation. It's a mitzvah in the Torah to have a good reputation. You have to find favor in people's eyes. You're right. I can't say the word asud because of all these new reasons. I can't make it asud to go without a kippah because of manita ayin. So I'm not going to use the word asud. It makes sense to say that there is here al kol panim yoter mimidat hasidut. Says the Chacham Ovadia, I'm going to make something in the middle between hasidut and the word asud, right in the middle, a little more than hasidut.
But you would prefer to say.
Exactly. So it's a little bit more in the middle ground. He's giving it to you as it is. By the way, Chacham Ovadia gives you halacha and you make your own. So Chacham Ovadia says it's not asud. I can't make it asud, but it's not midat hasidut. It's not only for the rabbis. That's what he's saying. It's more than the rabbis. Anyone who has a kippah, no one has to worry about him that he's not religious, even though I'm sure there are plenty of people who work with kippahs that are terrible people also. But you're probably a good Jew if you wear a kippah. Last piece. This is another twist.
I don't know if it's probably good or not, but you're declaring something, you're announcing something. The person who puts a kippah on,
you're wearing a badge.
He wants to say something.
You're wearing a badge. You say, I am religious Jew. Even if you aren't one, you're wearing the badge. Absolutely, it's Yichul Hashem. So if you wear a kippah on your head, you better act nice. Absolutely, it's Yichul Hashem. Yeah. That's why one of the main reasons I love wearing a kippah, because I have to act like a mensch. I can't do whatever I want. Then you're taking what was good and you're making it bad. Yeah, you better be nice. Hagaon, this is the last piece. Yossi, you ready for the last idea? Reb Shlomo Kluger had a new idea in his Sefer Ha'elef Lecha Shlomo, and it goes as follows. Ha'ela lehadesh bazeh. He had a new hidush. Sheyesh lehiluk ben gilui harosh legamri shu asur min adin legilui miksat harosh shu rak b'midat hasidut. That's why in the beginning I said this class is about Naftali Bennett. We're going to talk about the Bennett kippah. Yeah, little tiny.
You gave too much credit.
When we were kids growing up, when we were kids growing up, we used to make fun of the Ashkenazim. By the way, the Syrians, we don't wear kippah all day long, but when we wear like I don't always drink beer, but when I do, it's does. When they do it, they wear the big ones. We used to make fun of the Ashkenazim. They used to wear little bottle caps on their heads. That's what we used to call them. So Rav Shlomo Kluger says there's a difference. If you go with absolutely nothing on, in his opinion, with nothing on your head at all, it's asur minadin, he says. Rav Shlomo Kluger. If you go with a little one, that's okay. So it says, let's see what his words. This that the rabbi said, I should be rewarded for wearing a kippah. Huna says in the Gemara Shabbat, that's because he was wearing a big kippah. He said, I could have wore a small one, a little Bennett kippah if I wanted to, but I'm wearing the big one, so I should be rewarded. Is it assuming? This that the Midrash says, hey, if I wanted to, I could have made you pray with your kippahs off, and your hats off, and I decided to let you pray with your hats on. For sure Hashem would say, you have to wear a little tiny kippah. You have to wear something on top of your head. Says the Rav Shlomo Kluger, absolutely nothing on your head would be forbidden. Says the Chavadia, it's not what the Midrash meant. You're reading the Midrash the wrong way. And I'm going to skip a little bit. Says the Chavadia, also the Pri Megadim has the same sort of issue where he splits up a partial kippah with a big kippah. Says the Chavadia, don't say there's much of a difference between the small and the big. Moshe Feinstein in Sefer Ilot Moshe, tamam me'od al Gaon Rab Shlomo Kluger. He didn't understand this mahashal at all. What are you going to say in the Gemara? I should be rewarded for wearing a big kippah, but I really had to wear a small kippah? Says Moshe Feinstein, you really not make sense. And therefore, she says, even Shlomo Kluger has to say in the Gemara, you don't have to wear a kippah if you don't want to. Says the Chavadia, this is only lamdis. This is only ripping it up, not for anything practical. Says the Chavadia, the halacha is as follows. The pious, proper Talmid Chacham level is to wear a kippah that covers your whole head. That's the best of the best way. Or akol panim robo, or most of your head. Uchmo shekatav tishurat Shaarey, like in the Sefer it says, and also in Shu'ev Nish'al. Ikom gam bekippah kitana, even with a small kippah, if shallah don't nakil, you can let people be lenient. No, it's not hayab. The best of the best is a big kippah, he says. But if you don't want to wear a big kippah, a small kippah, you can say it's okay. The kippah, says the Chavadia, should be seen from all sides of the head. And whether you're standing in front of the guy, Bennett, when I see him on TV, he's not wearing a kippah. It's all the way in the back. Says the Chavadia, people standing on all around should know that you're wearing a kippah. Look, kippah kitana, not a tiny kippah, shebekoshi efshar le'abhin ba, that you have to like use a magnifying glass to find. Like the Sefer Rabbi Ovadia Hidayah, who was a Halabi rabbi, he writes, many times he would yell at these people, Ketantana is what? Teeny tiny? He used to yell at these guys wearing a tiny kippah. What do you say? Pepsi cap, yeah, bottle cap. Okay. Let me skip to the end. Ulam, says the Chamadia. I told you now you can wear the Bennett kippah. You can wear a tiny kippah that's seen from all sides, says the Chamadia. Ulam, b'sha'ah kriyat shema tefillah, when it comes time for shul, time to pray, shemikabel av o mechut shamayim, when you're going to use Hashem's name and be mikabelim, tzarich le'izaher yoter lelbosh kippah shemechased rov harosh. Please get a kippah for shul that covers the majority of your head. Sharei ne'emar hikon likrat elevecha el Yisrael. Prepare yourself to greet Hashem. וראה, במה שכתב בספר מגן גבורים, שהנוהגים בבואם לבית הכנסת להסיר הכובע שבראשם מחמת חכם, people who come to shul and take off the hat because it's hot, ונשארים בכיפה קטנה שעל ראשם, and they only have a small kippah on their head, כאשר הם עומדים בביתם, just like they have at home, וכך הם קוראים קריאת שמע ומתפללים, this is how they pray, בוודאי שדבר זה נחשב לחוצפה, says the Sefer, the Meiri says this, it's a chutzpah to wear the size, a tiny kippah in the shul. I don't know about these days. In the old days, you would never walk in front of a, you would never stand in front of a king without a head covering. Nowadays, the king doesn't have a head covering. Summary. Mutar minadin. It is allowed from the absolute law ללכת בכיפה קטנה שעל הראש, אף על פי שאינה מכסה את רוב הראש. You can wear a small kippah that doesn't cover most of the head, ובלבד שתהיה ניכרת ונראית מכל צדדי הראש, מלפנים ומאחור. That it should be seen from both the front and the back. ובשעה קריאת שמע או תפילה, when you pray, בכל שכן ברכת המזון, for sure, ברכת המזון, which is דאורייתא, ראוי להקפיד לחבוש כובע. It's nice and fit to wear a hat, or at least a kippah hamechaseh et rov harosh, a big kippah that covers most of your head. The people who listen should be blessed. If someone walks around with no kippah, can you tell him that you're doing something asur? You can't use the word asur. You can't use the word asur. Should he? Should he be wearing one? He probably should, because you want to identify with the Am Hashem. He doesn't want to wear a big one. He wants to wear a tiny one. Not when it comes to, maybe have two kippahs, one for shul and one for home. When it comes to shul, it should be a bigger one. Yeah. Anything you want, I think. That already.